It's both funny and sad in a way, my friend, in that we remember the extremes and not the everyday. For example, we remember like the worst day or the worst times of our lives, and there'll be like this darkness and despair over it. But then we also might remember the best day or the best times of our lives, and there'll be like a beat in the night. But this average day in the middle will get blurred, and sometimes even the days that linger a bit one way or the other will also be blurred. And there's a truth to this in a way, in that, well, the truth is reflected in our stories, in that most stories will take place in the extraordinary, where there's drama and change in a character's life, where either the world is about to change or the character's world is about to change, and they have to decide what they're going to do with it, if they're going to stay the same or change with it. And again, it kind of shows what a character is made of, and it's oftentimes in the drama and change in real life that we find out what we are made of, what or where our choices will lie, what we'll do at our darkest hour, in a sense. But of course, there is room for slice of life stories as well, and there is an audience for that. In that, it is kind of relaxing to just see people going about their day or just having fun for a bit, rather than being stressed out about life responsibilities in general or whatever. So there can be a bit of push and pull with this. But again, most stories that we remember are in that drama, that change, where we are seeing what characters are made of. And so we remember those extremes. Just like for people we meet, we'll often remember either the kindest or the meanest people that we come across. We don't really recall those who have simply gone about their day until maybe we see them again. But it's like once it becomes personal for us, then we sort of have that connection, or we make that connection in our minds. So then it can be like if we're dating people or in the dating market, we'll remember like the best dates or the worst dates that kind of freaked us out versus all the ones that were just okay, there was no really spark or anything there. So it just sort of disappears into the background. Now, the wrinkle in this is that we will often focus more on the negative, or at least did it to replay in our minds over and over again. And again, even with people we meet, we can start to focus on the negative more and more, in that it just is like we looked at all the bad things they did or all the things we didn't like versus all the things that they did right. And it didn't. Sometimes we tend to get more caught up in all the negative than actually all the good, even if the good outweighs the negative. And then we can kind of check this with how many times we think about the worst case scenario or all the way things should go on versus all the times we have thought about the best case scenario, all the ways things to go right. And another example we can think of is that we'll remember the embarrassing moment versus all the times things just went normally and easily. It's like, oh, we tripped and fell this one time in front of everybody. So we're remembering that constantly almost, or we said the wrong thing, but we won't really recall all the times we just walked up those stairs normally, or maybe all the times we just treated people easily and gently, in a sense. So it's just sort of those things where it's like, yeah, we're remembering the extreme situations and we're remembering the time that may have had some trauma or embarrassment to it. Now, the thing is, for trading stories, this tells us two things. The first is that characters will likely think this same way, at least if we're writing them to be kind of like actual people in a sense. Now, then, there can be a bit of wiggle room with this, in that sometimes you want to make the character a bit different, so you could give them perfect recall, and again, that's useful for detective stories and so forth. But for the most part, people remember the big moments or the significant moments. Now, they may have an eye for the detail, but it is often related to the big moments, I think, in general. And again, sometimes that detail can be related specifically to making a big moment, like trying to attract someone's attention so you're remembering all the little things they liked. And again, there is also that thing with the negative slant, where they might also remember the worst things versus the best things. And perspective matters on this, because it's like for one person, they could have been having fun and so forth, where another person was embarrassed and wasn't having fun at all, so they remember the situation entirely differently. So for what seemed like a normal, even happy day for someone, may be a really nasty day for someone else. For example, a character could completely forget who their foe was or is simply because it was an ordinary day for them. They're just mean to everybody. So who cares who they offend or so forth? Or maybe they're the villain trampling down cities bit by bit. And it's like they don't really care about anyone, but someone has a personal vendetta against them now. Or maybe everybody has a personal vendetta against them. They just don't really care anymore. But then you can also have that thing where some people don't really know what they did. They may have cut off someone in line or whatever, and it was just a simple action. They may not even have seen that person, but that other person remembers, and they remember clearly because they were late to something important for them. So it's just one of those things where it can kind of sort of color a person's entire perspective, and it can kind of really, when they go down that native road, it can kind of almost destroy them in a way that doesn't really affect the other person until they try to enact revenge. But it's sort of interesting how that can tell our character's perspective and even tell our perspective in real life. Now, the second part of this is that people remember the best and the worst of stories. The okay ones will just sort of blur unless a trigger happens, and then you start to, oh yeah, I sort of remember this now. Yeah, tell me more about it. Oh yeah, I clearly remember this. I clearly seen this movie. But there are the stories that really stick with us, that really resonate us. Maybe it was a character's arc that just sort of was beautiful in the unfolding and just sort of resonated with us as we watched them climb a bit and then fall and climb and fall and so forth until they made it to their destination. And sometimes we'll actually be shocked by how little we actually care about the story. Again, I don't care what happens to these characters. That can be the worst things to as a writer because you want them to care about the characters. You want them to care what happens. Otherwise, why would they stick around? Even if they actually just actively dislike all the characters, they might still want to see them get their comeuppance. But if they don't really care, they have that apathy, then they won't even stick around. So it can be interesting at how the character arc can shape that, in that maybe the character arc is just sort of making the character worse and worse. Or maybe the fact is there is no character arc. They're just straight line and so forth. They are treated as perfect and so forth. And it's like, but they're actually jerked in real life, or in real life terms, they would be considered jerked. But in the story, they're likable and so forth. And it's like, what is going on here? But I guess the kind of takeaway I have from this is that if you are just interested in doing like that trick payday or whatever, then an okay story to do. And you just want to make it appealing to the masses and so forth. But if you want to be remembered for your story, do your best or do your worst. But anyway, those are my thoughts on this. Why not share yours in the comments below? And if you enjoyed this video, you can like and share it so others may enjoy as well. Anyway, I'm Jonah, and you've been watching Lionsmade Media, where we celebrate some stories and lessons learned from them. Thank you for listening to my musings. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.